Oops, sorry.
Hello and welcome to Spokane Buddhist Temple's virtual service. Sorry, Melissa. Good morning, everybody. My name is Amanda Goodwin. I will be your MC today for our virtual service, and your doshi will be Reverend Melissa Opel. Before we begin, please know that we will be muting your microphones, and it's recommended that you turn your camera off and switch your viewing mode to speaker view. To do this, go to the upper right-hand corner of your screen and you can choose speaker view. Because we do live stream our services to Facebook, if you would not like your picture or name shown, please take that into account and update it accordingly. After service today, we will have some time for socializing and discussing the Dharma Talk that we hear. I hope that you all stay to enjoy that with us. And if you have any ideas for topics you'd like to discuss or questions on anything at all, you can put them in the chat, and that way we will know to get to them afterwards. Reverend Opal will lead our opening chant, which is the Sambu Jo. The Sambu Jo can be found on page 24 in the service book. And I will share my screen here for those of you that don't have a service book at home. Thank you.
Namo Mirabutsu. Namo Mirabutsu. Namo Mirabutsu. Namandats, namandats, namandats.
This temple was founded in 1945 by the late Reverend Terao and his family. During many uncertain years, his leadership and the dedication of the Japanese American community has provided an example for us to follow during our own uncertain time. We are grateful for their vision and dedication to share the Dharma in our community over the years. The causes and conditions that bring us together today are infinite and serve as a reminder that our actions do impact others. For this reason, we try our best to act in gentleness, kindness, and gratitude. We will now read the Golden Chain number 1 on page 15. I am a link in Amita's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amita's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Please turn to page 14 for the reading of the Ryoyuman number 2. Together, please. I rely on Amida Buddha with my whole heart for the attainment of nirvana. I give up trust in my powerless self and abandon all practices that rely on the false ego. I know that because of Amida's boundless compassion, I am assured of rebirth the very moment I put my trust in Amida. I call the name Namo Amida Butsu in happiness and thanksgiving for the gift of the universal vow. I am grateful for Shinran Shonin and his followers for leading me to this profound teaching. I will try to live throughout my life according to the way of the Nimbutsu that they have taught. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, namanda. The Suture Chant this morning will be the Jusege on page 93.
Gagon Chosegan Kishimu Drodo Shigan Fumanzo Seifujo Shogak Na Omuyoko Fuidai Seishu Busai Shobingu Seifujo Shoga Nashijo Butsudo Myosho Chojipo Kukyo Mishomon Seifujo Shoga Ryokujin Shonen Joe Shubongyo Shigumu Jodo Isho Teninshi Shinriki and Daiko Kusho Musaido Shoujo San Kumyo Kosai Shuyakunan Kai Hichi Egen Meshi Konmoan Heisoku Sho Akudo Sudatsu Zen Shumon Koso Jo Manzo Iyoro jipo, Nichigatsu shujuki, Tenko onpugen, Ishukai hozo, Koseku dokuho, Jodai shuju, Seppo shishiku, Kuyo isai butsu, Gusoku shutoku hon, Nane shitsujo man, Toku isan gayo, Nyobutsu mugechi, Sudatsumi fusho, Nangaku eri, Toshi sai shoson, Shiganya koka, Daisen no kando, Koku shoten ni, Touchin yoke. Namandabu, 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 Namandabu. Gani shikudoku, Myodo seisai, no hon tsubo daishi, ojo an rako. Namo Mirabutsu. Namo Mirabutsu. Namo Mirabutsu. Namandas. Namandas.
Thank you, Reverend Opal. Today's Dharma Talk will be given by Sensei Paul Viel.
Good morning, everyone. And please join me in Gasho. I know how truly grievous it is that I, Gutoku Shinran, am sinking in an immense ocean of desires and attachments, and am lost in vast mountains of fame and advantage, so that I rejoice not at all at entering the stage of the truly settled, and feel no happiness at coming nearer to true enlightenment. Oh, how ugly it is, how wretched. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, 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 Namanda. Here in this quote, Shinran gives us an honest self-appraisal of his state of mind. And at the very least, we can certainly understand it's very a humble statement. Outwardly, he's convinced his actions are good. He's virtuous, worthy of praise and recognition. He truly believes he is a good person, but he has come to see himself as he truly is, a foolish, self-centered being filled with all manner of greed and anger and delusions. This is the most difficult of all difficulties to accept. And we're all like this. In a way, Shinran is speaking for everyone. We're constantly thinking about ourselves, believing that we are good and helpful and concerned about the welfare of others. But deep down, below our conscious awareness, we know that that's not always true. We can be deceitful and harmful toward others. It's human nature. Our goodness and virtue, it turns out, is conditional. We're not all bad and we're not all good. We're just ordinary human beings, full of ignorance and self-delusion, blind passions. Shinran understood this about himself, for he had awakened to Amida Buddha's great compassion, and he was profoundly grateful. To catch a glimpse of one's self as a foolish, ignorant being is the first step to waking up to why we feel the constant discontent in our life. This morning, I'd like to share a lesson that I learned about my foolish self that really helped my thinking. It's from this little book, a collection of Dharma Talks that I wrote between 2004 and 2017 when I was minister assistant here at the Buddhist temple. So I'm going to read a short story about a personality that I met that really showed me my foolish self. It's called Berkeley's Lone Wolf. In the fall semester of 2004, I lived for 4 months in Berkeley, California, auditing classes at the Institute of Buddhist Studies. The Institute is located some 3 blocks south of UC Berkeley, and it's in the heart of the bustling undergraduate district. When I needed a break from study, I'd take long walks through the streets of Berkeley. Now, the absolute ground zero of undergraduate life is found on the 5-block stretch of Telegraph Street. There, students, tourists, homeless people, panhandlers, musicians, and sidewalk vendors all mingle. And the aromas and colors and noise emanating from dozens of fast food stands, combined with music blaring from many CD stores, produce a full-on sensory overload. It's both exciting and a bit disorienting. Among the many interesting characters I got to know along Telegraph Street was a homeless man in a wheelchair. I'd slip a buck into his empty soup can hanging on his armrest, and we'd chat for a few minutes. He gave his street name as Lone Wolf. I had to suppress a smile at the irony of his name. The image of a lone wolf brings to mind words like physical strength, fierce independence, and fearlessness. which hardly seemed to apply to this young man who looked undernourished and ill-equipped to defend himself. Over time, I learned a bit about him. He said he didn't know his exact age, but guessed he was about 26. Having no family, he had been raised in foster homes and institutional settings until he was 14 and had lived pretty much on his own since then. He lost both legs below the knees due to untreated diabetes in 2000. He supported himself on Social Security disability insurance and street donations. What struck me about this man was his worry-free, matter-of-fact attitude about his situation. He never asked me for anything, nor did I ever hear him blaming the system for his plight. From my perspective, he lived in hellish conditions, but he had figured out how to survive and seemed to take it all in stride. I admired this fellow and decided to help him in any way I could. Over the next several months, I had many encounters with Lone Wolf, usually brief conversations lasting no more than a few minutes. I might hand him a cup of coffee, $1, or maybe a bagel. He accepted these things with a quick nod of his head and God bless. One chilly, overcast day in October, he was wrapped in a blanket, dozing in his chair, when I dropped some spare change into the soup can. He opened his eyes. He said it had been very noisy in town the night before because of the homecoming crowd. After the game, sports fans came downtown to celebrate their victory over UCLA. A lot of crazy people down here in the park last night. I didn't get much sleep, he said. As we continued to talk, the wind picked up and dark clouds gathered overhead. I asked him where he went when it rained. He frowned. Well, that's a good question. Everybody tries to squeeze in wherever they can find a roof. It can get real tight sometimes. That's when you really got to watch your stuff because people will try to steal it. Sometimes it's safer to just stay outside and throw a garbage bag over yourself. Staying warm is the main thing because if you get wet, you get cold. If you get cold, you start to shiver. And if you start to shiver, you get hungry real fast. Heck, all you need is a little common sense out here. That's all. As he spoke, I thought of the great gulf between us in our life circumstances. I'm thinking about heading back to my warm, cozy little dorm room where I can sit quietly and read and nobody will bother me. He's probably thinking, geez, it's gonna rain. Gotta find a spot to stay dry where no one will hassle me. We didn't speak for a while. Finally, he shrugged. I had to respect this guy. In the midst of his poverty, he maintained a very stoic composure. Looking at him, I understood I had nothing to complain about. In another time, in another place, our situations might well have been reversed. I couldn't help wonder if I would hold up as well as he does. Later that night, I heard the rain pelting on the roof. Lying in bed, I thought about him and hoped he had found a warm spot for the night. A few days later, I saw him again. I noticed his hands were red and chapped looking. He told me he had lost his gloves. The following day, I bought a pair of inexpensive gloves to give to him. I've learned you have to be kind of careful how you do this out here. You don't want to attract attention to what you're doing, as other people might notice him and mark him as a source for their next pair of gloves. These gloves were wrapped in a crinkly sandwich bag. I thought maybe you could use these, I said, while handing him the paper sack. I continued walking another 50 feet, turned and looked back. He was trying on the gloves and smiling. I smiled too. For a brief moment, I shared with him his surprise and delight as he examined the gloves. I could almost feel the tactile sensation in my hands as he slid his hands inside. Well, maybe his load lightened just a bit, I thought. The following week, I got up early and headed downtown for a walk. It was cold enough to wear a jacket and gloves. I admit I was curious to see whether he was wearing his new gloves. Telegraph Street was nearly deserted that early. I spotted him all bundled up in his chair near the curb. I walked by and I saw that his hood was pulled up over his head, covering his face. His head was leaning to one side, supported by his bare hand. He appeared to be asleep. I walked on. Where are the gloves? Did he sell them? Did he lose them? Were they stolen? Why wasn't he wearing those gloves? I turned around and started back to ask him. He was just waking up as I approached. Hey, Lone Wolf, cold one this morning. He yawned and stretched, looked up at me. Appears so, he said. Now I'm burning to ask that question, but I can't. In truth, it was none of my business what happened to the gloves. There's no quid pro quo here. Nowhere was it written, hey, I gave you gloves, now you're obligated to wear them. Wake up, Paul. I pulled the collar up over my jacket. It was getting colder. I put $1 in his soup can. He took it out, looked at me, and said a most curious thing. Hey, dude, I'm okay with the money situation right now. As he said this, he withdrew a small pouch from his jacket, unzipped it, and pulled out a wad of bills, wrapped my $1 around the bundle, and stuffed the wad back in his pouch and zipped the whole thing back inside his pocket. He did all this very quickly, very deftly. In case I hadn't heard him the first time, he said, I don't really need money right now. His face remained expressionless. Yes, I can see that, I said. Well, you take care now. Catch you later. As I moved away, I thought, wow, this guy is full of surprises. He didn't have to show me his stash. That's a dangerous thing to do out there on Telegraph Street. But he did. Was he trying to tell me something? Was that flash of Bill's his way of saying, dude, don't start buying me a bunch of stuff or taking me as your special charity case. I'm just out here living my life. I'm not here to make you feel good. Whoa. Sometimes subtle, unexpected words and gestures go deep inside and wake you up. We like it when people say and do things that agree with our expectations. We're comforted. We don't like it when people say or do things that challenge our thinking. Yet those are important inputs that help us to see the world and ourselves clearly without all the wonderful narratives that go on in our internal thinking. In such moments, Buddha's teachings arise before us like a Dharma whisper, or maybe they're hard to see, kind of like a hummingbird's wings in flight. His words exposed me to my foolish, self-centered motives and crushed my belief that I was a virtuous person. As dire as his life situation was, at least by my standards, it was Lone Wolf, not me, who was living it. And he had figured out how to make it work on the street. It wasn't for me to characterize his life as good or bad. It just was. In my ignorance, I believed that my acts of charity meant I was a good person. Knowledge derived from human thinking is always flawed because it arises through the lens of our selfishness and the need for self-aggrandizement. We see it playing out in other people, but seldom do we recognize it in ourselves. We have to get that pail of ice water in the face from a stranger before we can see it in ourselves. I'm grateful to him for that. Well, I saw Lone Wolf a few more times before returning to Spokane. My attitude toward him had matured. I understood a buck now and then was all that he wanted from me, just that and nothing more. What an admirable fellow. Please join me in Gasho. I know how truly grievous it is that I, Gotoku Shinran, am sinking in an immense ocean of desires and attachments, and I'm lost in vast mountains of fame and advantage. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sensei. That was a wonderful Dharma talk. We're now going to read The Threefold Refuge on page 10, led by Reverend Melissa Opal, and I'll share my screen for you guys again.
Difficult is it to receive a human form. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Dharma of the Buddha. Now we hear it. If we do not cross over to the truth in the present life, in what life shall we cross over? Let us with sincerity and true reverence take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we, together with all sentient beings, awaken to the great way of enlightenment and to the unsurpassed intent of Amida Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we, together with all sentient beings, enter the storehouse of the Dharma, becoming like the wisdom ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we, together with all sentient beings, become units in true accord, in harmony with all things. The peerless, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rare to encounter, even in many hundreds and thousands of kalpas. Now we are privileged to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, namandats, namandats.
Thank you, everybody, for attending today's virtual service. As an all-volunteer Sangha, we truly appreciate all donations and efforts. Without your continued support, we could not do such things as assist with continuing education or provide a place for all to come and listen to the Dharma. Although we cannot meet in person, many volunteers continue to maintain our temple and keep it functioning so that when we are able to meet again in person, the space will be ready. If you would like to donate, you can do so by sending a check to the temple at 927 South Perry Street or via the link on our website. I'll put the address for the temple in the chat, but you can always email the temple if you have any questions. And we will now have a few short announcements. If you didn't submit your announcements prior to service, you can type them in the chat. Or if you have any topics for the Dharma discussion, you can put it in the chat. I'm going to allow everyone to unmute themselves.
Our first announcement is from Celeste from the Social Welfare Committee. Celeste?
Hey, everyone. Well, Paul's Dharma Talk couldn't have been more appropriate to what I want to remind everyone of. Our social welfare group are currently supporting Jules Helping Hands, one of the homeless shelters here in Spokane, and we're supporting them with your generous donations. I know when we first started this, we said we were going to we had hoped to just raise $1,000 to help Jules with their power bill for the warming center. But you have been so generous, we're almost up to $2,000 in our donations. And really want to thank you for that. Although there'll be, I'm sure, no one donated with any self-centered motives, that they did donate with truly compassion in their heart for and out of concern for the others, welfare of others. Because as Paul mentioned, think how hard it is to live on the street in Berkeley, but imagine how hard it has been for some folks that have no permanent home in Spokane during this frigid weather we've been having. So if you feel so inclined, please continue to donate what you can to our fundraiser through the website or sending in a check. Thank you.
And if you do send in a check to the temple, just make sure to designate it that it's for Jules Helping Hands for that fundraiser. Next weekend, the National District Council meeting is continuing on, and there are several workshop opportunities for people to join and participate in. Although you can't participate in the actual meeting itself, you can on the 27th of February join there's a Dharmathon that will be recognizing the past reverends this last year that have retired. And so, it's kind of a great opportunity to hear 4 reverends that have had long careers teaching the Nembutsu in the BCA. So I would highly recommend it. That's at 3:30. And then on the 28th, if you would prefer to join the BCA's Taikyo Perpetual Memorial Service, you can do that as well. And that is going to be honoring former Bishop Kodo Amezu and his service to the BCA. And there'll also be a workshop at 1:30 that day for the closing program and the Dharma Forward and some other things. So you can find all of that at bcancm.org. So that's BCA National Council Meeting.org. And that has all of the links for you to join those things live.
I forgot, I have one more announcement. Last year we were going to have a Rummy Sale, but due to the pandemic, we canceled that Rummy Sale. But now we're hopeful that we're all going to be on a forward track, and we've scheduled our Rummy Sale for May 15th. So I wanted to just ask you all to consider, if you've been doing some cleaning from your home while you've been stuck in pandemic mode, and anything that you want to donate for the rummage sale would be truly appreciated. Anything except for, we decided we can't handle a lot of clothing or any kind of electronic things that don't work and big giant TVs. But pretty much we'll accept just about anything else. And starting the second Saturday in March, we'll be having the temple open on Saturday morning from about 9 to 11. So you can drop off any items then. And then coming in the newsletter this month or March, we'll have some more information about the Rummy Sale. Thank you. I'm done.
Sounds good. Were there any other announcements? All right, so in place of Oshoko, we're going to have a few moments of quiet sitting to think on the Buddha and express our gratitude for the teachings. Afterwards, we'll have our socialization and Dharma discussion. Thank you.
Before I ring the bell for Oshoko, I want to recognize that on February 19th was an important day of remembrance for our Japanese American fellow Buddhists that we are able to share the Dharma with, and that share the Dharma with us as well. On February 19th, 1942, the President of the United States authorized our government to incarcerate Americans simply because they looked like the enemy. Over 100,000 American citizens and immigrants of Japanese ancestry were forced to give up their homes, businesses, and way of lives, and were interned wrongly and unjustly. We are very grateful for the founding members of Spokane Buddhist Temple and their perseverance to recover from this tragedy. So as we consider our gratitude, not only for the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, we especially on this day want to remember and express our gratitude for those that have brought us the Dharma to this country. And we thank them so much. So that now concludes our service. I'm going to end our live streaming. For those that are joining us on Facebook, thank you for taking the time to share in the Dharma with us today, and I hope you have a wonderful week.